I love this microphone. It's like ice cream, basically. So, hi everyone. As Lorenzo said, thanks. Exploring new settings. So let me quickly present myself. I'm Allan. I've worked in marketing and sales in other companies before moving to Berlin. But I've always had a passion for game design, tabletop games. Those, unfortunately, are not my dice, but I have a few as well. I've been very busy in the staff of an unofficial Ultima Online server, level design, and balancing testing, so on. So I finally recently decided to actually start a training in game design, and now I'm at the Games Academy here in Berlin. Just finished my first game. So, today's outline and goals. It's just 15 minutes, so it's going to be really quick, but the idea would be to analyze the current settings, game settings we have around on the market, see how they work and why we have these types of settings, and then with awareness, understand how to better decide how to choose your setting, to pick your setting. Okay, so why this topic? I've been thinking about this topic for a while, and especially during game jams. Look at the wonderful pun I've put in the slide. I've tried to, sometimes I've tried to pitch some ideas with other people during game jams relating to non-standard settings. And I found it somehow difficult. And so, for instance, let's try a game set in an African slum. But not a serious game, just a normal adventure. People live there, it's normal. And people go like, whoa, Africans, a serious game, no, it's... And so I just thought, I understand it, because it's a topic which is not debated a lot. And then I realized that maybe this is the right time to speak about this topic. It's a time when diversity is being spoken a lot about, feminism, diversity in games, diversity in the industry, within developers. So why not? Let's give it a go tonight, and hopefully you'll find it useful. So I decided to start with a picture of an interesting setting of the game BioShock from BioWare. And I just want to show this picture because it's the city where the game is set. And the city, if you look at it, it's inspired by a North American city of the 30s. And it makes you think about, for instance, Orwell, 1984. And that's actually the topic of the game, corrupt politics, a city struggling with lots of chaos, the big brother. So I just took this picture to show how a setting, just a city, can say a lot about a game. So I think a setting can be described as a set of tools as well. So not all games need settings. Some don't, but if you have settings, they can be very useful. They can influence your gameplay, obviously the story, narratives, dialogues, but even the mechanics of the game, the music, the graphic style. So I think they're very useful. That's a useful element of the game. So I went through all the settings, a few settings, and tried to find a way to divide them into categories. And I've come up with 3 different types of settings. Low shelf settings, that's not me as a child. Then invisible box settings and out-of-the-box settings. So I'm going to explain them now. So low shelf settings, basically these are the settings that you see every day, ubiquitous and are given for granted. So fantasy settings, you can see the Lord of the Rings setting, Middle-earth, or some unclear Balkanic country or Middle Eastern country for first-person shooters, Japan, Middle Ages today, the space for science fiction games. These are settings we see every day. So they can be great settings, really, really good. Games can be done very well, but I feel that sometimes they're just chosen lazily. There's not much thought behind them. They're a very safe choice, that's a pro. Looking at pros and cons, it's easy to tell your other developers or to find references and to work on it. So it's a quick choice. It's easy to work on them, but they can easily be boring. They're not an asset. They don't help you to distinguish yourself. The game is not enhanced, especially by these types of settings. So I thought, let's look at other settings which are trying to make a step beyond the standards we see every day. And I call these settings invisible box. For instance, there's Transistor. It's a science fiction setting in the future, but has strong artistic elements from the 20s, the beginning of the 20th century in Europe, and makes it aesthetically very appealing, very interesting. Or, for instance, Assassin's Creed in Venice. It's Middle Ages, quite standard in Europe, but it's an interesting city, Venice, which you don't see very often in games. Or, for instance, this very interesting game I discovered recently, didn't know about, American hunting game, Cabela's African Safari. It's a hunting game, but it's not with deers and ducks in North America, it's in Africa. So you can see these examples, some more successful, some less, of trying to do something different, getting out of the usual standards for settings. So again, it's still a relatively safe choice because you're not turning things around completely. You are sticking to what you know, but you're trying something different. My feeling with this type of settings is that some work really well, but with some you feel like they could have put more effort. They're just grazing on top of the research of the topic, and but not really delving into it like an iceberg. And finally, I wanted to speak about out-of-the-box settings. So here a few examples. For instance, previously we had an example of a game set in Africa, but in the end, very, very cliche. I mean, safari in Africa, seriously. Whereas in this case, yeah, that's what I do with my African family all the time, hunting, yeah. And in this case, you have a story set in Kirikou. It's a French game, based on an animation movie, you might know it. And it's a story of an African child in West Africa, between Chad and Mali, fighting against an evil witch. And the whole story, the legends being told, the dialogues, the music, the settings are based on this specific part of Africa. And there's still many people who have very fond memories about the game, even if it's a relatively old game. And it's not a serious game about starving children. So I think that was an interesting research they did there. And again, another game you can see there is Journey. Journey is not about, it's very interesting because the lead developer, Yeva Chen, actually said that he tried intentionally to avoid Eastern or Western cultural references. And the whole setting in this case, it's about the journey itself of the hero. So you actually see the place, the environment changing, being darker and more challenging when the hero is struggling, or when the hero is happy, the place becomes glowing, beautiful, and open. The sky is blue. So this is an interesting example of how the setting has been researched and has been transformed into an asset for the game. So, by the way, there's another game there, Bastion, as well. This is another interesting example, I think, because the setting, you could call it a fantasy setting, but it's just so different because it's actually based on a destroyed world. There's just few floating platforms left, and as you explore the world with a beautiful narration on the background, you are actually building it yourself. It's the tiles are forming beneath your feet. So these are all, I think, very interesting examples of out-of-the-box settings. So which are the cons? Obviously, you can see from the picture there, there's risks because you're trying something very different. Internally, it could be difficult to communicate the idea, to sell it to your the other members of your team, or even to publishers. It can be difficult to work on it, less references, more research needed, so lots of work. But on the other hand, it can be very, very rewarding. The game can stand out because of its setting as well. It can strengthen the game. So, moving towards the conclusion, I think the main theme of this short presentation is about awareness. And so why do we have these settings? I think each of us is influenced by lots of elements. And so here I listed a few. Some more obvious, some less. For instance, you have geography and history. So each of us, as a developer, thinks about his own or her own geography, where you're born, you know, the places you know, the cities you know, the environments, nature you know. And about your history as well, what you've learned at school, what you've heard from your parents or grandparents, your religions, mythologies. These are all very important factors. And it's good. I mean, it's great to have this inspiration. But if you're aware of them, I think it's easier to use them and to explore other ones as well. Obviously, mass media, very important factor. Other games, books, and films, so on. And then there's a last picture there of a poor child. And I think that's another interesting factor that we tend to underestimate. And if you think about it, like of all the mainstream, like low shelf settings, as I call them, there's just one which is really exotic, if you could say so, non-Western, and that's the Japanese one. And you could think, oh, then actually low shelf settings are not that uniform. There's a diversity. But then if you think that actually in the 70s and 80s, when the gaming industry was forming and actually becoming what it is today, Japan became the second major economic powerhouse of the world, you realize that, okay, Europe, Western Europe, North America, Japan, there is an economic factor as well. It's not Vietnam, it's not China, which has a great amount of tradition and histories and legends. It became Japan, the country that influenced like mainstream video games. So if we are aware of these factors, we can do more. We can keep on using them, but maybe add more, change them, twist them, and do research. So as I said, thinking about it, being aware, I think it's very important to achieve great results and to use this toolbox settings. Research, in order to make this presentation useful, a few tips. It's quite obvious, but I think it's great to speak about it. Research can be done, obviously, through Wikipedia. You can find lots of interesting things on other cultures, on ideas from philosophy, so on. We all love Wikipedia, especially as students. We have all gone through the phase of copy-pasting from Wikipedia. But I don't trust everything yet. That's why there's books as well. You can see books and for Lorenzo. And obviously movies and all sorts of medium. So, in conclusion, choose your setting, don't let it choose you. Thank you.